Senator Banks basically teamed up with President Trump to try to seek revenge on the squishes, the rhinos there in the Indiana Senate, who opposed Donald Trump's request to redistrict Indiana to net at least one, possibly more than one additional seats for Republicans there.
If you're tired of the mainstream media hiding what's really happening behind the scenes in American politics, you're in the right place. Today, we're breaking down the massive redistricting battles exploding across the country, why Democrats are panicking after major legal setbacks, and how President Donald Trump is still proving he has enormous influence inside the Republican Party. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because we cover the stories the corporate press refuses to touch.
Well, more on this decision, and you're so right. This whole notion of reverse racism and racism, it's all just racism. There's no positive discrimination. It's just discrimination. But let's talk about the other states that are going to be impacted and what is going to be the net impact of these redistricting efforts we're now seeing. How many seats are Democrats going to gain in states like California, and how many are Republicans going to gain now that they're going to play by the same rules, essentially?
Yeah, so the big news on Friday morning was that the Supreme Court of Virginia has officially now nullified the entire Virginia redistricting referendum. So that was going to be a four-seat power grab. Abigail Spanberger, who infamously ran as a moderate for governor of Virginia, who has governed as anything but a moderate in her fairly short tenure thus far in Richmond, the capital of Virginia. She was trying to pass this referendum. It actually did, in theory, pass by a fairly narrow margin, about 3 points. The DNC, the National Democrats, spent about $70 to $80 million actually trying to get that thing across the finish line, all humorously to have it thrown out by a 4-3 decision of the Supreme Court of Virginia. So that is going to be essentially a four-seat loss for Democrats, that they couldn't get that thing across the finish line. The Gavin Newsom redistricting in California will definitely net Democrats some seats, but virtually everywhere else you look, Rita, Republicans are going to stand to gain seats as a result of this fairly rare mid-decade redistricting push. So Greg Abbott in Texas is going to net probably 5 seats, give or take. It'll depend on some of the margins, but give or take 5 seats. Here in Florida, where I live, Ron DeSantis and the Florida Republicans are going to net all but assuredly 4 additional seats there. And that's just the 2 largest red states, Texas and Florida there. So the continued fallout of this Voting Rights Act decision will continue to have repercussions all across the broader South. So Louisiana is likely going to net at least 1, possibly 2 new seats for Republicans. Tennessee, which we were just talking about there, that's going to be at least 1 new seat. Alabama will be 1, maybe 2 more seats. South Carolina could follow. Georgia, it's a little more complicated. It's the middle of the election there. But a lot of these southern states that have majority white populations, but a sizable black population, these were the states that were really the focus of the Voting Rights Act regime as it was implemented there. These are the places where you had these legislators and lawmakers who were trying to carve out these majority-minority districts, these black majority districts there, which, again, they thought they were doing this, Rita, to not discriminate on the basis of race. The irony is that they were literally discriminating against white people in these states there. So these bums essentially are going to be out of seats there. People like Jim Clyburn in South Carolina, who's long been a kingmaker in Democratic politics in South Carolina, he is going to be out of a seat all but assuredly come at least 2028, probably not 2026, but sooner rather than later, he'll be gone. Hank Johnson in Georgia, same thing there. So the whole net of this is that when you get to 2030, which is the next census there, the census is going to show just a further egress, a further exit of blue states in California, New York, and a further ingress into red states like Florida and Texas there. So you take the Voting Rights Act, take the fact that Republicans, frankly, are just a lot better at this game than Democrats are, and they take the fact that people are moving to red states from blue states there. All this to say that in post next census, come 2030, come 2032, the map's going to look very, very, very different there, and it's going to get a lot harder for Democrats to take the House, and frankly, a lot harder as well for Democrats to win the Electoral College and therefore the presidency.
Well, we want greater representative democracy, don't we? We don't want to have states like New England where the Republicans get around, say, 45% of the vote and have 0 representatives. You want to have some sort of representative democracy. And I think the more we see of that, the better. Now, in Indiana, the Republicans there refused to follow President Trump's redistricting strategy, and they paid a heavy price, Josh. What happened in the primaries there?
Yeah, so Donald Trump, by the way, along with Jim Banks is one of these senators from Indiana. I personally think quite highly of him. I think he's actually a rising star in the Republican Party, who's someone very much to keep our eyes on there. So Senator Banks basically teamed up with President Trump to try to seek revenge on the squishes, the rhinos there in the Indiana Senate, who opposed Donald Trump's request to redistrict Indiana to net at least one, possibly more than one additional seats for Republicans there. And long story short, he was very successful. He won the vast majority of these primary challenges. To state the obvious, it's easier said than done to primary an incumbent official there, one who is in office, who's familiar to voters there, who has a campaign operation there, who is running for re-election there. So Trump was able to knock off at least 5 of the 7. Last I checked, Senate District 23 was essentially too close to count. It was a single-digit margin. It's probably going to go to a hand vote recount kind of thing there. And then one incumbent barely survived there. But the vast majority of these incumbents were picked off. And that's really, really important because it says a lot, frankly, about the state of Donald Trump's approval ratings and how much Republicans currently like the guy as we head into this November. There's been a lot of talk in the media, a lot of talk, frankly, among the pollsters that Donald Trump is losing popularity among Republicans there. He's losing popularity among MAGA. They say it's because of the war against Iran. It's because of this, that there. It's not true. Okay. It's literally not true. Donald Trump's approval ratings among his party, among his base are very, very high. He is still the guy. His endorsement still goes way further than anyone else's in the entire party, frankly, in the entire movement there. And a bunch of squishes in the Indiana Senate were just the latest ones to find it out the hard way.
Yeah, what happened in Indiana? Wow, that was astonishing. I think that took a few people by surprise, and there'll be a few other states who'll be perhaps looking at similar results shortly. Now, we've mentioned the Virginia Democrats. This is how well they're going. They managed to misspell Virginia and senator in their motion to delay the Virginia Supreme Court's ruling on gerrymandering. So that's how well they are traveling. That they spent $64 million on that referendum that has been struck out. And one man who's been very outspoken on this issue and pretty much everything else is Barack Obama. Josh, you've written about the former president and you asked the pertinent question, why won't Barack Obama go away? Tell me more.
Yeah, it's a question, Rita, that frankly I've been dying to know for some years now. Barack Obama, unlike virtually every other president in my lifetime, has physically stayed in the nation's capital. It actually, this never happened, frankly, until Woodrow Wilson, who was America's first great tyrannical president, essentially the guy who created the administrative state. He famously stayed in Washington, D.C. Barack Obama then became the first president, I believe, actually, since Woodrow Wilson, so in about a century, to physically stay in Washington. And we all know that he was in and out of the Biden White House. A couple official meetings, probably a lot more unofficial meetings, frankly, I'm personally of the opinion that Barack Obama was actually pulling a lot of the strings, frankly, during the Biden-Harris regime, where we had a mental patient running the country purportedly in name only for 4 years there. But even more so than physical proximity to the White House, Barack Obama is just a ubiquitous presence here when it comes to our media cycle, when it comes to our campaigns. He was there at the DNC in Chicago. He was the number one campaign surrogate in all the swing states, Wisconsin, Georgia, you name it there, for the Harris-Walz ticket in 2024. And now he's doing the rounds with Stephen Colbert there. So the guy just won't go away. And this is despite the fact, Rita, that we now know that he's admitted, Barack Obama has admitted that his constant politicking is causing, quote, genuine tension in his marriage to Michelle. And by the way, I might add, I don't think it's helping his party very much. As I mentioned, Barack Obama was the number one campaign surrogate for the Harris-Walz ticket in 2024. What did that do for the Harris-Walz ticket? Not a whole lot, frankly. They lost every single major swing state. They lost all 7 key toss-up swing states, literally all 7. Trump went 7 for 7. So that gets back to our question. Why is he still here? Why is he doing this? And frankly, Rita, I go back to a personal anecdote. So Barack Obama taught constitutional law for about 12 years at my former law school, at the University of Chicago Law School. He predated me, although his portrait still hangs there, unfortunately, still in the class in the law school classrooms today. So I remember when I was there, it's about a decade ago, I remember asking a senior member of the faculty who interacted with Obama there, and I basically said, I'm kind of curious, Professor, how was this guy liked? Did you guys enjoy him? Was he a positive contributing member of the faculty? And the professor did not mince words. He said no, because he did not contribute to the collegial atmosphere there. He was much more interested, frankly, in what he had to say than what anyone else had to say. And I said, aha, that gives away the entire game. Because that's who Barack Obama is. Barack Obama, Rita, is a deeply, deeply arrogant, hubristic man who thinks that his you-know-what smells better than everyone else's you-know-what. And frankly, I think that is the ultimate reason why he is just out there, because he genuinely believes that what he has to say is just much more valuable than anyone else there. And ultimately, Rita, what I say is, dude, if you're not going to give this up for the sake of your own party, because apparently it's really not helping your party, can you at least listen to your wife, who is like apparently telling you to stop this there? But again, these egos, Rita, these are massive supersized egos that we're talking about here when it comes to Barack Obama.
Well, Michelle's started a podcast with her brother, which seems to just be, well, critical of her husband fairly consistently. She's talked about everything, about being annoyed about how he chooses food, to talked about 10 years of unhappiness in a marriage isn't a big deal. I mean, she's telling him loud and clear that perhaps there is a problem that he needs to address in that marriage. But I do wonder, Josh, is he really everything that Democrats accuse Donald Trump of being? This thirst for power, the fact that he's still trying to pull the strings or was pulling the strings with the Biden administration, this just disregard for others' opinions, and the arrogance you spoke of. I mean, this is everything they accuse Donald Trump of being guilty of.
Yes, and there's so many examples to pull from here. So just one of the things that Barack Obama complained about in his recent sit-down with Stephen Colbert was he said that the Republicans are threatening judicial independence because he says that they are trying to excoriate certain Supreme Court justices there, that they're trying to undermine the integrity of Hamilton's least dangerous branch, Article 3 of the judiciary there. You know, Rita, I have a long memory when it comes to these things. I remember quite vividly when the Supreme Court heard oral argument in 2012 for NFIB versus Sebelius, better known as the Obamacare case. That was when the whole world was attuned to see whether the constitutionality of the individual mandate of Barack Obama's healthcare law will be upheld by the Supreme Court. And over the course of the months that went by, where we were kind of on pins and needles waiting for the court to rule, Barack Obama gave a Rose Garden address in the White House with the entrappings of the White House there and said that this Supreme Court will not take the unprecedented and extraordinary measure of declaring a law unconstitutional. To which I just sat there and said, this guy taught constitutional law? Like, this is literally what the court exists for. Like, this is literally the purpose of the Supreme Court, is to determine whether or not a statute that Congress passes is compatible with the Constitution there. So, I mean, he was the original guy to try to browbeat and hector the Supreme Court and say, don't do this. I mean, there were so many other examples here. I mean, Democrats today complain that Donald Trump...
So many, Josh. He's again guilty of projection because he continuously accuses the current Trump administration of weaponizing the FBI and government institutions, which is what he did. He weaponized those institutions to go after his ideological opponents. Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time.
The political map in America may be headed for one of the biggest transformations we've seen in decades. Over the past few years, Democrats pushed aggressive redistricting strategies in several states, arguing they were protecting representation and voting rights. But now, courts and Republican-led legislatures are pushing back hard, and the results could reshape Congress for years to come. One of the biggest developments came out of Virginia, where a Democrat-backed redistricting referendum was reportedly thrown out by the Virginia Supreme Court. That decision alone could dramatically impact future congressional control and block what critics described as a major power grab attempt. Meanwhile, Republican governors and lawmakers in states like Texas and Florida are moving aggressively to redraw district maps in ways that could strengthen conservative representation. Texas could potentially add several Republican-friendly districts, while Florida is also expected to expand GOP influence even further. And this is where the story gets bigger than just one election cycle. Population shifts are changing the balance of political power in America. Millions of Americans have been leaving high-tax, heavily regulated blue states and relocating to states like Florida and Texas. That means future census results could give red states even more congressional seats and Electoral College power by 2030. Democrats understand that reality, which is why these redistricting battles have become so intense. At the same time, we're seeing President Donald Trump continue to dominate Republican politics despite endless media claims that his support is collapsing. In Indiana, several Republican incumbents who reportedly resisted Trump-backed redistricting efforts were challenged in primaries, and many of them lost. That sends a clear message. Trump's endorsement still carries enormous weight with Republican voters. No matter how many headlines the media pushes claiming the MAGA movement is fading, the grassroots base continues to show up. Another major part of this discussion focused on former President Barack Obama and his continued involvement in national politics. Critics argue that Obama has remained unusually active behind the scenes long after leaving office, especially during the Biden years. What's interesting is that many of the same people who accuse Trump of holding too much influence rarely criticize Obama for maintaining a constant political presence in Washington. That double standard is something many Americans are noticing more and more. Now look, regardless of where someone stands politically, every American should want fair representation and transparent elections. Redistricting should not be about protecting political elites forever. Voters should choose their representatives, not the other way around. And here's the bottom line. The fight over congressional maps is really a fight over the future direction of the country. The outcome could determine who controls the House, who gains power after the next census, and even who has the advantage in future presidential election. This isn't just political theater anymore. These decisions will impact taxes, border policy, energy independence, law enforcement, and the overall direction of America for years to come. What do you think? Are Republicans finally fighting back effectively in the redistricting battle, or are both parties guilty of trying to game the system? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another update on the political stories shaping America's future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.